Hey folks, welcome. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes, waiting on our guests and hosts to join us. If you are new to Cafe Bitcoin, welcome. This is the Lightning Lab. We have a very special event today with Elizabeth Stark, Lyn Alden, and Nik Bhatia. Real quick, a little bit about Cafe Bitcoin. This is a Bitcoin only club right here on Clubhouse. We have events all the time. Um, if you are new and you're not part of the club, feel free to join the club by clicking the little Cafe Bitcoin icon at the top left. Everybody gets into the club, but you can go home and tell all your friends that you're cool, you're part of Cafe Bitcoin. We've got Elizabeth Stark just joined us. We've got Nik Bhatia. We have Ryan Gent. We've got John, Jamal. Desiree will be joining us, and Lyn Alden as well. So super excited. A few announcements for Cafe Bitcoin. We've just added Bitcoin in Arabic. And if you're new and don't know about our schedule of events, you can go to cafebitcoin.club. We have a calendar set up now with all the recurring events, such as we have Bitcoin in Portuguese, we have Bitcoin India Hour, Bitcoin in Spanish, in German, in Arabic, as I mentioned, in Turkish, in French. We have Bitcoin Pakistan, Bitcoin Africa coming soon. We also have Bitcoin in Russian coming soon, and we're hoping to do a lot more of these one-off events. And special thanks to Lightning Labs for doing this show every week. I've been enjoying it so much, and I'm really excited about this one. So welcome everybody.
Hi. Wow, that's a lot of languages. I love that. Like I need to improve my Portuguese. I know some folks from the community have reached out, but yeah, how I'm curious, like how are those communities growing?
So we've kind of just put the word out. We have a Telegram group, and we've been keeping our eyes out for folks, for Bitcoiners from different countries who speak different languages. I've been kind of coordinating and getting it all set up, and we're kind of just making sure they're good Bitcoiners. But everything seems to be growing and going well. So a lot of people willing to step up and devote their time, which is part of why I love Bitcoin. So. Oh, wait, let me make Nik a moderator. And just so you all know, this is streaming right now to the Swan Bitcoin YouTube page, so you can go back and listen again, or you can share the talk with friends, family, anyone who might be interested.
Awesome. All right, should we get started? Like it's it's a great group. Des and Ryan and Becky, I know you guys have been holding down the fort in recent weeks, and we've gotten a lot of engagement from the community. Yeah, can you give us a brief recap of like the kinds of stuff you were talking about last time? And because I'm sad I missed it.
Last week, we were just kind of covering some of the ecosystem updates, just what was going on in the news. And we had I believe we touched on NFTs, which I feel like we have been touching on every week because they annoyingly won't go away. And that oh, sorry, I just choked when I was.
When is somebody? By the way, I've actually witnessed numerous tweets of artists who've had other people create NFTs of their art, and given that I actually have a background in copyright law and used to actually teach about those issues, in chatting with friends and being on Clubhouse a month ago was like, okay, wait till we see the IP issues with NFTs, and they have definitely come to exist. But yeah, that's a separate side point. And then actually there was a tweet where the artist said, I'm blocking all the NFT accounts, and then somebody created an NFT out of that tweet. And yeah. It just never ends. It's like there's NFTs all the way down. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm excited by NFTs, to be honest, as someone who makes art as well. But NFTs do not solve copyright issues, and they don't solve a great many issues, I think. But they are exciting, and who knows? I think we're going to see them on Lightning relatively soon and on Liquid. So they're coming back to Bitcoin.
There was a great tweet by a friend of mine, Paul, who said, Bitcoin solved the double spend problem, and then NFTs recreated it. In part because people are creating NFTs out of other people's work, and then of course there can be on multiple chains, and you don't have the guarantee of authenticity per se. But okay, not NFTs. Okay, what else?
Yeah, and then then we just kind of went more into a Q&A, and people asked. So we actually got into like a really good discussion about a lot of folks who are new to the space, and something I've been talking with Becky about is just even at Lightning Labs, we're obviously thinking a lot about onboarding developers and helping people get started building on L&D. But, even like a broader question is like, hey, how do we just like even get people up to speed on what Lightning even is? And so kind of, even just taking a step back and, we talked a lot about usability and just bringing people generally to the space, not necessarily developers. So we kind of got like very, very high level. And so, yeah, that's something, I think Brecky and I have been talking about starting a little mini series on Lightning 101 and people who are just coming to the space. So yeah, I mean, we got kind of high level and did more of the Q&A type of stuff, but obviously we're evolving this room as we go. So I think this week we are very, very excited to obviously have yourself, Elizabeth, which you join us quite often, but also have Lyn and Nik joining us. So really excited to get their perspectives and, just kind of have a general chat. And, Lyn's work is amazing. And a lot of folks are super excited to hear what she's been working on. And Nik, I know you recently released your book, so would love to hear more about that. I have not yet got my hands on it, but I'm excited to dive into it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we also definitely, I know we have some hands raised as well, so we definitely want to interact with the whole group. But yeah, I think both Lyn and Nik, like you guys have been riding up a storm lately, which has been incredible. And by the way, Nik, we hung out in Southern California back when people did that, which was super cool. And we had been internet friends as well. And Lyn, you and I are also now internet friends. So it's always great to see my internet friends here. But I'd love to hear a little bit just about how your recent work relates to both Bitcoin and Lightning for both of you, because I know for both of you it does. Lyn, I have the articles you just released that I know you and I spoke about before you released them up in a tab. So I'm excited to read it hopefully tonight when I get some time. And Nik, I'm very excited to read more about the work that you've been doing. But yeah, like Lyn, do you want to go first? Tell us about what you've been, writing lately and how that fits into the themes here.
Absolutely, and happy to be here. So yeah, I wrote two articles. I kind of released them at the same time. One was on Bitcoin's network effect, which a couple other sources have written about, but I wanted to do my own take on it and basically present it to my readers. And so I had a pretty long form piece on the ways that Bitcoin's network effect has developed in recent years, and particularly for people that don't know my background with Bitcoin. I first wrote about it in late 2017, November 2017, and I passed on it. And I wasn't explicitly bearish on it, but it had a really big run up in price. I was concerned about some of the hard forks and some of the dilution that was happening. And so I ended up writing that, I'm passing on it for now. And I kind of listed out the reasons why, which is the ones I just said. And then over the next 2 years that followed, I kept monitoring the space, and basically eventually Bitcoin and the overall ecosystem addressed the concerns I had, and that's what eventually made me turn bullish. Ironically, at the same price as that I initially passed on it, but that I viewed it as significantly de-risked, and so I kind of cataloged in that piece some of the changes that the Bitcoin ecosystem has had and how it's strengthened over the past 2 to 3 years. And then the other piece, it got a little less attention because it's less kind of I guess it's more like a longer term review rather than kind of a bullish piece. And that one is about Bitcoin's eventual transition from block subsidies to fees, for its primary security. And because one of the bearish criticisms against of Bitcoin is that eventually, it eventually peters out and the block subsidies go away and it relies on fees. And if those fees aren't enough, it can run into security issues. That's a common criticism from Ethereum bulls. And so I had a whole piece just focused on that and some of the, kind of the ways that it can maintain that, some of the pitfalls it could encounter. So it's sort of a neutral approach and kind of analyzing some of the risks associated with that, but also some of the solutions, and it kind of quantifies it a little bit and goes into down the rabbit hole of how some of the numbers would have to work out. And so that's, a lot of the pieces I write, I start with the kind of things I'm curious about myself, and then figure out how to kind of answer my own questions and then share them. And so that was a kind of a subject that I was particularly interested in, and so I wanted to share that with my audience.
Also, one criticism that we have seen in the Lightning community is, well, if all transactions are off-chain, then where's the incentive for miners to keep mining if there aren't on-chain transactions with fees? So we can definitely get into that discussion. And my answer is, well, to open and close a channel, you still need to go on chain. And then also for a variety of Lightning native financial products, such as the ones that we built at Lightning Labs, those also require on-chain transactions. So you're really using the base layer. And I know, Lyn, you and I talked about this as the security layer for all these layer 2 financial products and transactions. And it just scales it to far more people than you would be able to if everything were merely on chain. Yeah, no, those are both extremely relevant topics to the Lightning community and to what many folks in the audience have been involved in and working on. I'm just curious, in terms of the network effects piece, was there a technical component? I know you've also done a lot of research recently on Ethereum and looking at the technology, but were advancements in the technology, something that you were looking at when you were analyzing how Bitcoin has evolved since the 2017 block size wars?
Yeah, certainly part of it. And I had a section, for example, on Lightning. That was kind of the main technical improvement that I went into in the article. Because I approach things more from an economic view than a technical view, a lot of my points are around the surrounding ecosystem, like institutional adoption, institutional grade custody, some of the better apps and hardware that supports it. Kind of the solution of the hard fork. Basically, you saw that the forks diminished in market cap and hash rate compared to Bitcoin, and that's where a lot of the piece was focused. But then I had a big section on Lightning and how the ongoing development of that second layer solution is playing a really key role. And then I also point out that in many ways, Lightning benefits from the network effect even more than Bitcoin, due to the fact that liquidity is the primary constraint. So as that gets addressed over time, and as better user interfaces keep being developed, that keeps strengthening and creates that flywheel.
I love, that's a perfect segue to Nik. I love that. Nik, hi.
Liz, hi, how are you?
It has been too long, but you were a trailblazer. You were writing about the time value of Bitcoin before it was cool.
And then I went into a cave for a year to write this book, and pretty much didn't talk to anybody, as I didn't want to jinx it and say I'm writing a book until it was essentially almost done. So but I'm thrilled to have published it, and the feedback and the reception have been phenomenal, and I appreciate everybody that's read the book, that's purchased it. It's made this whole process just like really a joy and a dream come true as well. And Brecky, thank you for your help along the way. Brecky gave it a read early on and helped me think about some of the graphics, those pyramids that you see. He helped me kind of sketch up the first few. And
you still haven't signed my copy. I'm very upset with you.
No, well, clearly he needs to make an NFT out of that copy. But
layered NFTs.
What's an NFT again? And then like a special shout out to Alex as well, who's here in the room. I see him because he was like the first person to put math behind this idea of Lightning Network interest rates. And so just congrats to the Lightning team for all the great work that you've done with Pool and advancing some of these ideas, because like I always say that I didn't invent the idea of Lightning Network interest rates. The transactions themselves have time value, and it's just intrinsic in the network. The routing channels themselves are financial vehicles, and the language that Ryan was telling me about when you guys released Pool, with these capital leases, it really showed me how far the Lightning Network capital market idea has come. And it also showed me that people that don't understand Bitcoin can never dream that within Bitcoin denominated capital markets, all these things are actually happening right now in front of our eyes. They can't even, and so like people that don't know about the Lightning Network, which is, you know, a lot of people outside of Bitcoin and many people inside of Bitcoin itself as well, they can't see that actually within Bitcoin, the denomination, it has the potential to spawn a whole capital market. And what Lightning Network is only one aspect of that, but it's an incredibly powerful one because, you know, as I've written about in the Time Value Bitcoin, the Lightning Network doesn't come with counterparty risk. It comes with the risk of managing your channels in your Lightning node, but it doesn't come with relinquishing custody of your property. And so just really excited to be in this room. I hope everyone goes and checks out the book Layered Money. And yeah, good to be here, guys.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear, especially given that you've been researching this stuff for a long time and you've been following the space. And I agree that what I think a lot of people miss about, you know, Bitcoin infrastructure and Lightning is we are building out these new forms of markets. Lightning Pool, as you mentioned, I think both of you, the non-custodial marketplace that we at Lightning Labs have built to buy and sell channels. And there's this whole new concept of liquidity that is present on layer 2 that we don't have on layer 1 in the same manner, that both present some challenges, which we can get into, but also opportunities. And one of the big themes when we had the Lightning conference back in October 2019, and a bunch of the folks here were present, I miss the community, was that these challenges present opportunities. And people were tweeting after the fact, you know, the community is both honest about the challenges, but then we're building out these solutions to address things like, you know, the need for inbound liquidity. I'd love to hear, I don't know if anybody from the team, we've got Alex, Ryan, do you guys want to chime in terms of some of the liquidity questions or the solutions?
Alex, go for it.
Oh, wow, a Lalu has appeared. Okay, a wild Lalu, yeah.
What's up? Yeah, just grabbing lunch, sit down outside. Eating lunch rather.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very surprised by how quickly that like real fees have become apparent on the Lightning Network. You know, I ran my node for years and, you know, wasn't receiving too much traffic, but like in the past year, I'd say, you know, now I'm routing $1 million a month to $2 million a month. And you know, there's fees on it, which makes me feel like this is real commerce. You know, people aren't paying fees to do nothing. You know, due to the privacy characteristics, I don't really know what's happening. Like, what are people transacting? But I know that it's worth it enough to them to, you know, let's say, like, currently I'm making maybe $4,000 a month on routing fees. So who's paying that? Somebody who wants to do that commerce. And you know, if we look at the trajectory of like basically nothing a year, 2 years ago to today, I can kind of see, you know, maybe in 2 years it's going to be a much larger network.
Yeah, and I think the mental model that I've really liked using is there's like 250,000 Bitcoin transacted on chain per day, like on average, pretty loose average for the last like couple years or so. And you know, all of those transactions are subject to the on-chain constraints that we all know. It's kind of slow to settle. It's kind of expensive. And the Lightning Network just offers a parallel off-chain route that has instant settlement. It's nearly free, but it just has this one constraint, which is liquidity, right? Like, and I guess liquidity routing is kind of like a dual constraint, right? So you get these amazing benefits, and you just have to deal with these couple problems. And I think that, you know, the way that we're building marketplaces to solve those problems is like the most scalable approach. And it's just incredibly exciting to see them like really growing, just like Alex said, like in the last year, really starting to mature and to become, you know, real commerce. It's pretty exciting to be a part of.
One of the things that I think didn't necessarily make sense to a lot of people, especially early on, was even the idea of the non-custodial financial products. I mean, pre-Bitcoin, that just was not possible. Like you had to give up custody for financial products. I mean, for those of you in the finance world, correct me if you know of other examples, but or there was a counterparty risk, right? And you could run away with the funds. And so when you have the ability to have contracts, and a lot of people think, oh, well, Bitcoin doesn't do contracts, but actually Lightning itself is a contracting system. And then Lightning Pool uses something really cool called Shadow Chain, which we can get into, a new form of contracts over Lightning. You're able to say both provide your capital, rent out your channel in a non-custodial manner, and then you're also able to pay somebody for access to that liquidity without holding custody. So I do think that that is a really exciting new paradigm for these non-custodial products. And then Nik, I know you've been analyzing this, you've been writing about it, but tell us more about the opportunities you see that this presents in terms of the new forms of capital markets. And then I also want to hear from Lyn about the liquidity research he's been doing.
Yeah, it still goes back to what I wrote about in the original paper, which is that Lightning Network, exactly what you said, non-custodial financial products didn't exist. It wasn't physically possible because financial products either come from a balance sheet or they come from relinquishing custody of some sort of asset or money in order to invest it. And so non-custodial financial products themselves give Bitcoin with the Lightning Network the ability to achieve a reference rate that doesn't use any one entity as its reference point. So the parallel to the US dollar capital market are US Treasuries. US Treasuries are considered the risk-free asset. I always put it in air quotes because it's risk-free only because it's the best counterparty that exists in the world in terms of creditworthiness. The US government has never defaulted and won't ever default because it has the ability to print its way out of its problems. So for that reason, it is the risk-free asset of the dollar world. But what's the risk-free asset of Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is a commodity, so cold storage of your own Bitcoin, private keys, is the risk-free asset. But then if you go to this purgatory state with your private keys where you open channels and you have these financial contracts that still it doesn't relinquish your custody, but it does let you get the Bitcoin involved into the economy. Like what Alex is saying, where he's routing real payments for people that are buying and selling things in Bitcoin with a Lightning Network. That demand for those transactions creates a fee market. That fee market can be associated with income that is associated with Bitcoin that never leaves your own custody. This gives Lightning Network the power to give Bitcoin a reference rate, like treasuries, but there's no central point. There's no counterparty. With the treasury, you're still lending your money to the US government. They still can theoretically default to you. But in the Lightning Network, that whole equation has changed. So it's incredibly powerful from that perspective, but it is still early. The Lightning Network is still small relative to Bitcoin, which is still small relative to the global economy. So, but it's growing, right? The path of growth is exponential. And then that's what gives everyone the hyper bullishness about Bitcoin and about Lightning itself, is they're all following this exponential growth pattern. So Lightning is going to be that reference rate for Bitcoin, in my opinion. It's not going to be whatever the BlockFi rate is. Trust me. That's a counterparty that has risk. It's concentrated risk too. And this is nothing against BlockFi. It's just that Bitcoin is novel. And so we don't need to use the old way of picking one credit-worthy counterparty and setting them as the risk-free model. No, it's going to be Lightning Network. So I'm excited to see that. I think that it'll take some time for that to develop. But first, what I'd like to see are people quoting Lightning Network reference rates. What are their rates, and average them in like an open way. See what you guys are going to publish from the Lightning Labs perspective. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to come in terms of actual numbers on interest rates in Lightning Network. And then those numbers will get out into the community, and people will start referencing them as the risk-free rate of Bitcoin.
Awesome. By the way, I will say I do love the haters. Like there's a community of people that whenever somebody hates on Bitcoin or Lightning, they get mad, and I welcome the haters, because to me that means that there's still an asymmetry there, and I like the opportunity to prove people wrong. We're in this phase where we've made a lot of progress, but it's certainly, there's not mainstream acceptance yet, and I don't want us to get there because there's so much left to build, and we can get to all that. But Lyn, I'm curious to hear your take in terms of the discussions we've been having and your perspective in terms of the liquidity element and how that plays into the network effects that you mentioned. And Metcalfe's law is one of, I'd say, my favorite recent topics, and you and I have been talking a lot about it. I know network effects has also been a big theme for you.
Absolutely, and I think Nik made great points there. And one thing I'd add is that when you compare it to treasuries are nominally risk-free in the sense that the probability of the issue of the currency defaulting is virtually zero, but they can still default in real terms. And for example, if you look at sovereign bonds throughout history over the past 200 years, the track record is actually really bad as a store of value, even though in any given decade they generally hold up pretty well. And even the U.S. government, which has had one of the better track records after a few others like Switzerland, there were large, effective defaults in the 30s, 40s, and 70s in terms of not that the treasuries default in terms of dollars, but they redefine what the dollar is and basically default on the old definition while maintaining the new definition. And the cool thing about something like Bitcoin and the Lightning Network is that in addition to having no counterparty risk, you have no debasement risk. And so you basically, in the current iteration of it, because it's a smaller asset, you have volatility risk. You have price risk as denominated in dollars, for example, but you have scarcity of the tokens or finite numbers of the tokens, and then you have that custody. And so I think that's one of the remarkable things about Bitcoin and the Lightning Network, that in addition, as it develops and it makes that payments easier over time, it's really kind of miraculous that it basically is risk-free in both of those terms, nominal and essentially real terms, rather than just nominal. And I think that's actually one of the key kind of just massive inventions of Bitcoin, and then of course from Lightning itself as well.
It's such a great point. I mean, it almost goes without saying for people that are too, so deep into Bitcoin, but it is important to remind ourselves that there is no debasement risk, and there is no risk of default in real terms with Bitcoin, and that's equally as powerful.
Lalu, do you want to chime in here? Are you done eating?
Yeah, mostly done. No, but yeah, I mean, because I remember like when Nik published his papers in like 2018 or so, I read them. I was like, oh wow, like he's almost there basically. But once again, he's not ready. It's like I feel like people didn't really kind of make the kind of leap that we did as far as kind of realizing the liquidity issue. Because I remember in the beginning, like everyone's like, oh my god, like it's not gonna work because basically you need to kind of have people commit inbound liquidity. I was like, okay, well we can just solve it with the community market. And I did research for maybe 2 or so years, eventually kind of stumbled on the idea of that itself. The other thing I say is as well, people that are plans are cool, probably just wait until Q2 or so. We have some really cool stuff coming along as far as things like contract rollover, streaming an interest rate, and also something with basically it's kind of like a forwards contract, and that you basically buy or resell the future cash flow of a lease itself. That's a bunch of other cool things around there as well. So so once again, people they're not ready. Like Elizabeth saying, there's still so much asymmetry. We're working on where we see the future going as well. Things are definitely picking up somewhat. We're definitely really excited about all the things we have coming out this year and then beyond as well. And then pools really started to catch on as well. I think someone posted the other day they made 1 million satoshis off of pool. So I was like, oh, we made a Satoshi millionaire. That's pretty dope. And he did it non-custodially basically. He, obviously kind of have the cost of securing your own keys, maybe it's the cost carry in a sense. But it's actually happening. People can watch the feed on Twitter basically. We're also working some additional tools to basically have it make it a lot easier to gather data. So kind of aggregate look at the yield curve like Nik was saying. The other big thing we have coming up is ideally in Q2. So right now people don't know we only have a 2-week release. So basically you you're buying and selling, channels like a 2 individual period of time. In Q2, hopefully we're going to add like kind of like longer releases, maybe like up to like 6 months potentially. Maybe we'll have like a 2 week, a 1 month, 3 month, and then go from there. And I think that's again really exciting as well, because then you have like kind of like individual curves, for those like short and long durations. Then you can actually start to like do a lot more analysis and draw some more interesting conclusions, and also like see how that changes based on kind of like other effects in the market as far as Bitcoin itself or options, things like that. So there's so much stuff we're going to drop. I'm so excited about it.
Right now for Lightning Pool, the default is 2 week, and that's the only duration we have at the moment. And people have also asked what are the current rates, and it's about 5 to 8% APR, although it depends on the trade. You can follow the Lightning Pool bot, twitter.com/Lightning Pool. But that's then, there's the 2 week rate amortized over the year. So the ability to have longer durations can help with that rate. I also want to give folks a chance. I know we have Nadav, John, Keegan up here. Do you guys want to chime in about some of the work you guys are doing and how that fits into the discussion?
Yeah, sure. I also had a question kind of following up on one of the things that Nik said. So I can start there, and then I can also sort of describe what we're doing at Start9. But one of the things that was mentioned was that the risk-free rate was talked about in terms of how capital gets deployed on Lightning. One of the reasons, so I mean, it's definitely risk-free in the sense that you're not putting like counterparty risk on the line. But one of the things that I wanted to point out is that Lightning channels are non-fungible. And so capital deployed in one place is not necessarily the same value as capital deployed elsewhere. In theory, it might converge, but like depending on where you sit on the node graph, like capital is more valuable to you than to others, or less valuable. And so
right, not all
channels
are equal, are how I often phrase it. And credit to Alex Bosworth, who has extensively researched all this. Yeah.
Sorry, was that directed at me?
Oh, I was just adding to your comment. Go on.
Oh yeah, so I was just saying I'm not sure that I like the treasury rate idea as a sort of model to understand how Lightning like fees and stuff work, because the cost and value of capital is not the same uniformly across the network.
Yeah, Keegan, I think that's a great point, and it's pretty fair. And the thing about Lightning Network is that it's native to Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is its own new asset class. And so the analogies are never going to be perfect. And actually, when you break it down like that, it's actually a poor analogy. But with that being said, I do think there will be some degree of convergence between top node routers in terms of what they're earning, and that average is a good reference point for other borrowers in the market to say, what will I pay to borrow Bitcoin? And it shouldn't be, in theory, a less interest rate than you could earn in a Lightning node. And so let me actually just follow that path a little bit further. I do believe that we will be at a point where top Lightning nodes that are making the most fees will have financial instruments that are actually publicly tradable, where you can buy in and dedicate your Bitcoin to Lightning via a counterparty arrangement, or even through just the Lightning Network itself, where you can funnel capital into one of these big nodes and extract most of the interest rate in terms of the fees, and the node itself is just clipping a little bit of coupon off of the top for themselves as being the coordinator. So we're super early in this, and so I do really appreciate you picking apart this idea that treasury rates are not the same as a Lightning Network reference rate. You're right, they're not, and but it still can be a reference point for Bitcoin.
It definitely contributes to the cost of capital for sure, right? Because the capital is necessary in order to be able to participate at all, and so it creates demand for that capital. But yeah, it's the fungibility that I was mostly challenging. That's all.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point, Keegan. So one thing that we haven't really talked about yet super widely, but something like kind of like a roadmap is because you mentioned kind of right now you can't really kind of trade channels per se, right? Like it's kind of like Nik was saying, like in the future maybe we'll have like individuals maybe kind of raise capital to actually make their own node. One thing we have coming is basically the ability to effectively trade the actual cash flow of the lease. If that makes sense, right? So let's say I have like a lease going, I sold somebody else, and it's most shoot up like 30 days, right? Work on the ability to basically let me kind of allow me to resell that cash flow to another individual, but once again in a way that's actually non-custodial and atomic, right? So that you'll be able to buy that kind of future cash flow, similar to kind of like a forward contract, which actually add tradability to the leases as is defined right now. Once again, all in a way that's fully non-custodial, atomic. It's one of the kind of resembles kind of multi-party channel, kind of counterfactory stuff from the bottoms up. So really cool, exciting stuff on that, and you definitely see more of that around Q2 or so. We first have to basically get streaming interest rates, and basically kind of you can effectively sell the interest stream to another individual, and then split that N ways even as well. So there's some really cool things you can do once we get that up and running.
Alec, do you want to chime in about not all capital being equal and the BOS score stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I make a lot of lists just generally in myself, my own node operation of different types of nodes, and I kind of see it as like real estate. So like if you buy a house and you buy a piece of property, part of the value in it is dependent on the neighbors and the city that it's in. It's not like you own the property and you have kind of like an idea of how much you could rent it for, but that's
do you have a
very
nice view or not?
Exactly, and there is so not all property is fungible, but there are pockets where a house in a certain neighborhood, they're going to go for a similar amount. So that's kind of how I see how I manage my node. I have different categories of channels, different categories of peers, and there is a lot involved in maintaining the reliability of your node. So if you have a node that has been around for many years, it is trusted by many people, it is it's reliable. You're not trusting it in the sense that you're not trusting it with your money, but you're trusting it with your channels, with your commerce. I want to use a service and I want to make sure that I can use the service in the future. And I notice that's what a lot of people do wrong when they do manage their nodes. They change their fee rates all around. They're not maintaining good uptime on their nodes. They're not maintaining good balance with their nodes. And I think that's kind of placing them in a bad neighborhood. They're kind of not investing in their future of their node. And it all comes down to user demand. Nobody wants to peer with those nodes. Nobody wants, and the pool does use this concept that I worked on for the Lightning app way back when, which was trying to classify nodes into different categories, and just at a very broad level, who's trying to run a great routing node and who's just put up a node on the network and isn't really paying too much attention to it. But we can subdivide that a lot. We can say these nodes are good for smaller amounts. These nodes are good for bigger amounts. These nodes are great in North America. These great nodes are great in exchanges. And then once you have those subdivisions, you can say, okay, a node in this area is going to earn this type of a rate because it's just reflecting the commerce in that area.
And what's the current state of the BOS score list? And tell people that aren't familiar.
I think that the list has kind of pivoted from its original inception as a way to inform autopilot, as it's being repurposed into the pool. And also, it's become more of a reference system for people just to kind of compare their nodes against each other, or to kind of sanity check how well they're doing as a routing node. So and if you don't know what the list is, it's just a list of public keys, node public keys. Out of all of the public keys on the network, there's some that are selected, and they're selected to reflect that they're reasonable routing nodes to connect to. You can connect to them. You can make payments on the Lightning Network. And then they're given within that list. So the list only represents maybe 5%, 10% of the total network. So you've already cut out 90% of nodes as not being great routing nodes. And then within that list, there's another subdivision of 1 to 100 million scoring that kind of gives you a rate that reflects their connectivity and their, within the network. So if I can connect to them maybe, I wouldn't say you would always connect to the top node. And the way that it was implemented in code is that there was going to be kind of like a random dice that would be rolled as far as how often you would connect to somebody. And that's how I would like interpret those scores as how much redundancy do I need? So like if I connect to one node, what happens if that node goes offline? Maybe its peers go offline. It's not through no fault of its own. So how much redundancy do I need in terms of having multiple peers? And I think that the scores itself have kind of been instructive to people of like, am I doing a reasonable job on my node? But there's more education that we could do surrounding the list in terms of just like the basics. Like we're not talking about a million billion nodes here. It's not the internet that we're indexing. We're talking about the people on the list. It's like 200, 300 people. So like I think the first step is just to kind of tell people, here's what is expected of you as a routing node. Here's the basic way that you can run your node. It's open source software. You can do anything you want. You don't have to be a routing node. But if you want to be a good routing node for people, here's how you do it.
Yeah, and while it's not a perfect analogy, some people have likened this to, in the financial world, the credit rating agencies, and the ability to know that this is a good node with good connectivity. Getting back to Keegan's point that channels are not fungible. I know we have a lot of raised hands, so we definitely should take some questions from folks. But before we go there, I want John, Nadav, Ben, does anyone want to chime in here?
Don't be shy.
I think everybody's busy coding.
Let me hop in with one more thing here, Liz. In response to that about what Alex was saying in the scoring, it reminds me that when I was writing the time value of Bitcoin, I actually toyed with the idea of comparing it to LIBOR instead of treasuries, but LIBOR didn't have a great brand, so it wouldn't have made probably as much impact. But LIBOR, is a panel of 20 banks that share an interest rate with each other. And they used to do it just without much evidence, and that's how LIBOR was manipulated. Now it has to be more of a transaction-based interest rate. So it's actually, I do envision Lightning Network reference rate to be somewhat of a panel of the top nodes, similar to how LIBOR is an interbank lending rate that banks just publish to each other, and it's only like 20 of them.
Super interesting. Okay, so we have a lot of hands raised. I think, can we just add, Des, do you mind adding a few people, and then maybe everyone can ask their question, and then we can kind of go around and discuss, like we can have a few questions at once?
Sure. Okay, I will see who's been waiting for a hot second. So Justin, I'm just gonna add Justin. He's been waiting for a while to the stage. Let's see if he joins. I might just add a couple folks because they might just not be watching.
While you do that, Des, I'm going to do a quick reset. Welcome to everyone who's new. This is the Lightning Lab with Elizabeth Stark, Lyn Alden, and Nik Bhatia, and many, many others. Some amazing folks up on this stage in awe of their Bitcoin prowess. This room is part of Cafe Bitcoin. We do this room every week on Wednesdays. Thank you to the Lightning team for making this possible. If you're new to Cafe Bitcoin, you can join the club by clicking on Cafe Bitcoin at the top left. We have all sorts of rooms in, I don't even know how many languages now. There's usually a new topic every morning. On Mondays and Thursdays now, we have beginner Bitcoin Q&A with a rotating cast of hosts with people like BTC Sessions. We had Andreas Antonopoulos pop in one day. All sorts of amazing folks who are lending their time. So join the club, and if you'd like to find out more info, including the up-to-date calendar that we just published, you can find that over at cafebitcoin.club. There's also some great free Bitcoin resources there. We don't actually have any Lightning resources, so Des, I'm going to talk to you. We should get some beginner Lightning resources up there too.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So we have some new folks on the stage. When you do join the stage and wait to ask your question, please do mute yourself so we don't get all of your great background noise. But awesome. Justin, I think you've been waiting the longest, so would love to get your questions answered.
I'll pass on a question for now. I'm just passing a question.
All right, no problem. Okay, I will move you back to the audience then. So then Raha, thank you for joining the stage. Do you have a question for the folks up here?
Hi, thank you so much. We were a group of people who want to start experimenting with a Lightning node, and we were wondering about how to make sure that our liquidity is easily rebalanced, because I know that that's a problem that a lot of people faced, where they couldn't maintain the balance of their liquidity, and especially if you don't have a lot of money put in your channel. Like I was wondering what are some of maybe the strategies, and also if it makes more sense to have like 1 or 2 channels with more volume, or have more channels with less volume, less liquidity, like divide up your liquidity into multiple channels. If that makes sense.
No, those are both really great questions. Alex, do you want to chime in here? Or I don't know if anybody else does.
Okay. So the question of like, should you have smaller or bigger channels? Like let's think about what you're really doing. You're being there when somebody needs you to move their payment. So if your channel is too large, then it's kind of a waste. You have so much liquidity that it's not being used. But if your channel is too small, that's also a problem, because they come along, you're kind of like shutting yourself off from consideration. So I actually like to think about an optimal channel size as like 4 or 5 million, like as a baseline, and then take it up from there. It used to be that it was in the protocol that there was kind of like this shard size of 4 million Satoshis. So that would kind of be the maximum size of a payment that will be relayed through a single hop. That's kind of how I base that on. But in general, I just find that you can be responsive to the payments that you see going through your node. And then, I forgot the first question.
I think it was how to onboard with and rebalance liquidity. Was
Yeah. So the rule of thumb for me is, are you making any money? So if you do a bunch of stuff and then you are not making money, then something is going wrong. And I would approach it from that perspective. Like, I want to make money on my node, so I'm going to look at the things that are costing me money and the things where I'm making money, and then minimize all the things that are costing me money and maximize all the things that are making me money. And I think that if you go from that precept, like you're helping people, because like if you're spending money just to do, like, that means that you are asking other people to do things. And if other people are paying you, then you're doing things for other people. So like, I find that that's kind of just the best rule of thumb to follow. And I would apply that to rebalancing. If you're going to rebalance, it's something to be very careful about, because let's say somebody pays you $5 to route a payment, and then you pay $10 to reset the balance to where it was before. You just lost $5, and you've also given them now a $5 profit motive to do another rebalance payment against your rebalance. And because the network is private, you won't even know that that's happening. So it's very important to if you're running a routing node, to keep an eye on the accounting to make sure that you are like operating it with economic sense.
And then one thing I add, like we have a tool coming pretty soon. Like if people kind of like seeing this thing from like SL Labs, we just like let you put like your website, and like we'll give you a rating as far as like how good your TLS connection is, things like that. So we have something coming out for like Lightning nodes. So you have to put in your public key, you kind of give a bunch of information like as far as like diagnostic, 2 large channels, 2 small channels, not enough liquidity, things like that. So that'd be kind of like a big thing people can use to actually like kind of like iteratively improve their node versus just kind of like going around in the dark. So really excited about that. Should be dropping soonish.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Raha. So then we will hop over. AJ, I believe you were next in line if you have a question for the folks up here.
And just quickly before AJ asks the question, Raha, we're also working on more guides and just resources for people to learn about liquidity and learn what to do there. So your question is very much along those lines. So stay tuned.
Thanks.
So my question is about the time course of development of the second layer solutions. And here's why I'm interested in. Bitcoin has always had this 4-year cycle and everyone's familiar with it. But when a cycle is that clear and that obvious, it usually degenerates and something else happens. And Dan Held is the one who's a proponent of the idea that we are in the ultimate cycle, and this is going to be a super cycle where Bitcoin prices will eventually reach their ultimate stable level. Now, in my mind, Bitcoin is already a store of value. It is completely unchallenged. People just have to recognize it. That part is done and over with. The thing in my mind is, what about these second layer solutions? If second layer solutions are going to be developing and adopted within the next year or so, then in my mind, this is the ultimate Bitcoin cycle, and there will be no more 4-year cycles. So what is the time course? You guys are more familiar with the technical aspects. I keep reading about Strike Global and Bottle Pay. I have no idea how advanced they are. So what is the time course of the development of the Lightning Network? And two, do you kind of agree with my analysis that if the Lightning Network or second layer solutions are complete, then there cannot be any more cycles? This is the last Bitcoin cycle then. Thank you.
It's always a very dangerous game to try to give time predictions, especially when it comes to software development. I will say that we're seeing, an increase in adoption, especially in the last couple of months. That's been really exciting, together with a whole host of new products. I know we have Jack in here who's been working on Thunder Games, and they've been getting a lot of really cool uptake. But yeah, I don't really speculate. The price of Bitcoin and then compared to Lightning adoption aren't always necessarily fully correlated. And there's a degree of a time lag as well, because it just takes time to integrate this technology, to build out these applications. It's not like if, Bitcoin goes up 2x tomorrow, that doesn't mean that a dev can build, an application in 24 hours just because Bitcoin went up. So I do think there are differing timescales. I'm curious to hear if Lyn, Nik, I don't know, anybody else, Ryan, if folks have thoughts around the broader macro perspective here.
I do think that, oh, go ahead.
I can defer to you. I can fill in maybe afterwards.
I was just going to comment that, I agree with the sentiment that when something becomes that clear, when a cycle is that clear, that eventually it degrades, one way or another, because there can only be so many people looking at that cycle before it kind of, people front run it, it gets diffused. And in addition, just because the supply halvings over time, that becomes a much smaller source of the supply of Bitcoin, that eventually that halving cycle should have a smaller impact on driving up the price as those cycles progress. Now, whether or not it's this cycle or the next cycle, I don't know. But going along with that, if you were to see increased corporate or insurance adoption as an asset, you in theory should see more of a stability, because you'd have more of a rebalancing effect with big pools of capital. So if Bitcoin dips, there's more people kind of quarterly rebalancing into it. If it surges, more people, maybe rebalancing out of it. We saw, for example, it was just announced that NYDIG has, a major insurance CEO joining their board now. So it looks like we're going to probably see more interest from the insurance industry to have a non-zero position. And so if that continues to grow, I would expect to see that the 4-year halving cycle diminishes over time in terms of those really clear price performances relative to the halvings.
Right, and there's Bitcoin the asset and Bitcoin the network, and a lot of what we've seen lately are advancements in terms of institutional adoption and Bitcoin the asset. But what I'm really passionate about, I know my team knows this, is Bitcoin the network and all the potential that comes along with Bitcoin as internet native digital money, and the fact that it's programmable. So for me, if Bitcoin is just the equivalent of the digital rock that you put away and you don't touch, we're missing out on so much of the possibility. And I do think now we're seeing this renewed interest in Bitcoin as a monetary network. And credit to Ryan and other Des and other folks on the team who've been helping out at the newsletter, Lightning Labs at Substack.com. We've been writing a lot about what's going on in the community and what people are building. I know we've had a lot of great questions in this room around the builders and kind of the challenges they're facing and just what they're interested in. But my take is Bitcoin, the network, is still fairly nascent in the sense that people are at the earlier stage of building. By the way, Jack, I know are you still, yeah, you're here. I know you've been seeing a lot of uptake in the gaming community, but are there any updates, or do you want to just chime in terms of what's going on in the Bitcoin builder world?
Yeah, I'm seeing actually, because I work with Voltage, that's who I use to run my node, and I follow that project quite closely, and they're getting a lot of interest in their Telegram and stuff. So I'm seeing quite a lot of people, developers, sort of trying, just experimenting, setting up a node, and yeah, just in general, like lots of consumers just trying the Bitcoin Lightning Network with, you know, they basically download one of my games to win some Bitcoin for free, and they have no idea what they're doing, and they're just like, I tell them download a wallet, and then they download a wallet, and then they start earning Bitcoin, but they sort of don't know what they're doing yet. So I'm seeing a lot of you know, consumers getting on board as well, which is good because it's going to give incentives for the builders to build stuff for them.
So would you say the community of evolving around Thunder Games is they're gaming enthusiasts that are just interested in Bitcoin, or who are they?
I would honestly say it's more people who are just interested in free money, because Thunder Games is like, we give away prizes in our games like every day, so it's really kind of a broad market of people who are just looking for ways to kind of earn money.
I mean, who doesn't want to stack sats?
Yeah, so it's definitely that. It's definitely it started off as like real hardcore Bitcoin enthusiasts, and like that's the kind of grassroots community, and it's the same with the Mint Gox project as well. And it's evolved because I'm on the app stores. It evolved to like, I get a lot. It's quite unusual in my Telegram groups. People speak different languages and like talk to each other in multiple languages. Quite like a worldwide phenomenon as well. It's not like I'm targeting one country or something, and everyone's very friendly to each other and helps each other. So yeah, it's definitely a growing base.
I love that. And by the way, I know we didn't get to the news. We've had so much interesting discussion, but there was this Aker shareholder letter that came out, I believe it was Monday, that talked a lot about Bitcoin, the network, mentioned Lightning, mentioned a lot of the possibilities that come along with it. My understanding was this was led by the CEO of a major energy company in Norway, one of the richest people in Norway, who has gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Did folks want to comment? There was, by the way, I suggest that people check out the shareholder letter. It was very, very eloquently laid out in terms of their thesis and how they see the future, and how not getting involved was a risk because there's so much potential present. But does anybody want to chime in on what they saw with the Aker newsletter? Or sorry, the Aker shareholder letter?
I think the notable thing was, as you mentioned, they talked a lot about Bitcoin, the network, rather than just the asset. And so that you know, a lot of the trend is that, you know, a lot of these institutions that put on their balance sheet are more interested in the asset at the moment. But he dedicated a lot of his writing time towards Lightning, and so I think that was pretty notable.
Yeah, that was great to see. Ryan, Nik, anybody else?
The other thing to comment about that particular letter was the fact that the narrative seems to be broadly shifting around the energy and proof of work debate. We've sort of had to live with the constant criticism for the last 10-ish years, right? That Bitcoin uses too much energy, or that it's contributing to destroying the planet. And now I think with people in the mainstream starting to wake up to the idea that how you produce the energy versus how the energy is used are two separate discussions to be had. And the fact that a lot of the net new mining activity is coming from stranded energy or energy that would otherwise be put to waste is a huge deal. That was, we've been talking about maybe inside the industry for a bit, but the fact that someone who was sort of formerly outside the industry is now commenting on it is a huge deal.
Yeah, so I have a quick question there, which is just to Lyn, which is, I'd love to hear her thoughts in the context of the petrodollar piece that she wrote about Bitcoin's role there.
Yeah, so I guess for context, for people that aren't aware, I've written a lot about the petrodollar system, and that, basically when it comes to global commerce, energy is quite different. It's more political in the sense that there's been long-standing agreements to price virtually all energy in dollars. And so if you start to see energy companies themselves begin to hold Bitcoin, that's a market different thing than a software company holding Bitcoin. And so the fact that they're increasingly aware of the benefits of using Bitcoin as it relates to energy, I think is really important. I had a conversation the other day with Marty Bent. I mean, they of course are people that go around and setting up mining on stranded sources to prevent flaring. And so I think as this narrative grows more, and as more energy companies realize this, that's just profoundly interesting. I think that's that was actually the most kind of one of the most important things I read in that article, and I actually sent that over to Luke Groman because he's always big on the energy factor as it relates to Bitcoin, and so that actually did stand out to me a lot.
Thank you.
Awesome. I know there was a bunch of other news this week. Ryan, do you want to? There was the Moon thing. Everyone's named Moon apparently in our world. Do you want to just remind people what if they didn't follow?
Yeah,
yes.
Moon is so overloaded in Bitcoin now. There's like 5 different tenses in it.
And also like everyone's kind of spelling it differently. Yeah.
Yeah, and Moon with 2 U's, Moon Pay, Pay with Moon. I know.
Going to the moon.
We could probably keep going for the rest of the Clubhouse time. But Pay with Moon launched, I believe, actually. Ken is usually in the audience. I wonder if we can bring Ken up if he's still here. Yeah, here we go. Ken Kruger.
Oh.
Ken, tell us, and also, are you committed to the Moon name? No, I'm just kidding.
You know what? People try to get me to change the name. They say there's too many moons out there, but I say no. We're going to become the Moon, and we're the company that spells it correctly. So
there you go.
So yeah, what did you guys launch? Super exciting stuff.
Yeah, so we launched the ability where you could pay with Lightning at any e-commerce merchant in the United States. So we teamed up with Visa to allow consumers to purchase Visa prepaid cards via Lightning and then use that to shop wherever they'd like. So it's really cool. It allows people to spend their Bitcoin in a non-custodial way, and we also put a really big focus on privacy. So there is no KYC process to go through to get a Moon card. There's no application. You install our browser extension, and you can start issuing cards for yourself and shopping with Lightning right away.
That's super exciting. Ryan, what else has happened? I honestly can't keep up.
Well, so one other thing that I wanted to talk about with regards to the Aker letter was I was really surprised that he had the sentence in there. Again, like this is an oil and gas exec, hugely rich man running a conglomerate, and he threw a sentence in there that I'm particularly interested in micropayments and how these may enable us to avoid usernames, passwords, and our personal data being monetized with and often without our knowledge or consent, which lines up with what Ken was just
Did you
talking
have
about,
that
right?
memorized, or did you just read that?
No, I pulled it up. That would have been cool though if I had it memorized, wouldn't it? No, so I pulled it up, but I think that's, you know, again, when talking about Bitcoin, the network, and talking about what Lightning brings to the table, like, you know, we're just now getting the world to realize Bitcoin's a store of value. Like the smart people are starting to realize, oh, what a global network of instant and fast payments using Bitcoin looks like. But even beyond that is what that does to the internet, right? With what having being able to pay anonymously, being able to kind of own your own keys, have you know, LSATs representing your tickets to enter different web services and things like that. Like there's so much more that can be built that is being built right now, and it was like really surprising and impressive to see a man like that recognize these details that are not known to too many.
Yeah, I saw that line too, and I got really excited. Given that, and for those that are not aware, LSAT, which is confusingly named the same as a law school entrance exam, stands for Lightning Service Authentication Tokens, and at a very high level enables people to authenticate with digital payments without a username or password. So clearly the folks at Aker have a lot of really smart people advising them, and I know they've talked to a lot of friends of ours, and they seem to get it in a way that not, you know, as many other people have, and that we, you know, we don't want an internet where we're constantly being surveilled. I mean, the idea, and he mentioned this, that he has to then give his personal information if he's just going to buy something digital. Sure, it's one thing if you're having something shipped to you and you're providing your address, but what if you just want to authenticate and pay for something digitally or streaming? Why do you need to give your, you know, dox yourself, give your home address? So the ability to natively authenticate over Lightning using payments on the internet has so much potential, and it was really cool to see that acknowledged. I don't know if anybody else up here wants to comment on Lightning native authentication.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, that was really exciting. Like they've like definitely done their research, and also like, you know, right now in the background we're working on some new use cases as far as like things with LSATs, and you know, super exciting. I definitely think like, you know, people just aren't really ready. One thing which kind of like a missing piece we're working on is kind of like, you know, kind of like bridging the gap between like the user experience, maybe some other changes that we have on Lightning, basically. So we're kind of like, you know, going toward the future where most of the things will actually be within a Chrome extension possibly, and then like a website we actually natively basically create a website that actually aware of LSAT or Lightning itself, and then use that to like prompt users to authentication, payments, things like that as well too. So I think once we get that final piece into play, like it'll be like really amazing. The one side beyond that is kind of like, you know, actually compiling LNDs like WASM, basically to have the ability to actually to run directly in the browser. So at that point, you basically just need one single install. Obviously, like, you know, one like small amounts because there's the browser for all. But I think at that point, like,
by the way, what is WASM? Not everyone knows what WASM is.
It's kind of like this like you know, like VM or intermediate root representation that lets you kind of like, you know, you can basically compile down other languages. It's similar to kind of like a JVM where you can actually like have this interpreter that's like running and then actually executing, you know, the actual code in the browser itself. So for example, like, you know, we can take LND, you know, it's written in Go basically, compile that down to like a new IR format, this WASM, and they actually have that be executed within the browser using the V8 engine as well. So that's a massive thing because, you know, right now, like, you know, LND kind of like is, you know, very like versatile. You can run like on the server, more from the rail. Now just basically just running, you basically have one click on the software Chrome extension. I think that's also big because at that point, like, you know, that's a massive armament to actually getting anyone to like, you know, change their mind or even try Lightning in the first place, right? Because right now you have to like get a node, you have to install a thing, blah blah blah. Again, definitely getting users things like Onboard or both. We want to like, you know, reach kind of like that more mainstream audience. We need to really like, you know, kind of like streamline that user experience, make sure the onboarding is as frictionless as possible. So I think we have so many pieces in place right now, you know, with that stuff, Sidecar channels, exchange coming on, things like that. I mean, so to me, I'm just like, okay, like the pieces are kind of assembled that I've been like envisioning for the past few years. You know, it's time for us to like put them together and start roll all this shit out. So, you know, it's really, really exciting.
And for those that are not aware, Ryan, do you want to briefly tell us what Sidecar channels are?
Yeah. So right now, if you purchase a channel lease from Pool, you buy it directly from the seller. But Sidecar channels would allow, you know, say for instance, Breeze, the non-custodial wallet provider, to kind of broker a lease and purchase a channel from a Lightning service provider and connect it directly to their new user, which solves like the perennial problem that everybody has pointed out for forever, that you can't receive payments on Lightning unless you like bring your own Bitcoin and open your own channel. So this will be like hugely helpful for onboarding and non-custodial wallets.
Right. Sidecar channels enable new users to onboard to Lightning without opening a channel in and of themselves.
Exactly.
Which is huge.
And the big thing is like you can actually like, you know, because like you can actually have them skip on-chain Bitcoin altogether. Right? So basically imagine like I have like a, you know, account on like, you know, Square Cash or maybe like, you know, something like that, and I bought Bitcoin. I can actually then use my card channels to get that Bitcoin directly onto layer 2. So I even skip maybe 2 or 3 transactions, as far as like withdrawing, opening the channel, things like that. So it really streamlines the actual experience of onboarding. The other big thing about it as well, you can actually get the channel to be like 50-50 balance. Like, so right now, whenever you buy a channel, or various channels on the network are basically like a single funder, so the liquidity is in one direction. Basically, I have all the money, you have the money. Sidecar channels basically let me kind of give someone $100 channel, they can spend and receive $50 at instantaneously at that time. There's a big thing as far as because otherwise you kind of need to open the channel to maybe do some things like get the liquidity in the right place. But I think it's really exciting. We're pretty close to that. Oliver has some PRs we're doing right now. Hopefully we start to test that in the next few weeks, and then ideally sometime in Q2 that would be live, and we'll have everyone else start to integrate that. And I'm really excited when Exchange start to integrate that as well too. So at that point you can basically the other cool thing is that it effectively lets you kind of create a new edge anywhere in the graph that you want to. So let's say I'm on OKCoin. I don't have a direct account with OKCoin. I can ask OKCoin to basically create a channel between Boz and I, right? Because maybe that's one of my preferred channel partners or whatever else. Then they can do that in a way it's kind of like putting down tracks, arbitrary areas in the network itself. So it's really exciting stuff. We definitely have a lot more explainers, guys, things like that coming on that in the next few weeks. So definitely stay tuned on that.
Oh yeah, that's a reminder that things move so quickly. Since last week, OKCoin also launched their Lightning integration in production. And I did a really cool AMA with Hong, their CEO, Jason, COO. A lot of the community members were there for that, and that was super fun. So yeah, it's there's so much happening, we can't keep up. By the way, Ken, I'm curious, is LSAT something that you guys have looked into in terms of authentication with Lightning payments?
No, that's actually not something we've looked into that much yet, but open to doing something like that.
All right, we'll have to get you guys more information, and we're definitely creating more guides and documentation about that. Okay, we have Sujung, Michael, and Tom. I know you guys have been waiting for a while, so maybe if each of you would just ask your question and then rapid fire, and we can address the three.
Yeah, I'll go. I don't know who you would like to have in the audience, but it sounds like what you want are the types of people you want in the audience are developers and miners and so on, right? Because so this is going to really reveal my ignorance here, but you're talking about onboarding new users, setting up channels and running nodes, and these are certainly not the onboarding of small consumers, right? It's small consumers who will benefit from the Lightning Network, who might buy $10 worth of goods at a corner store, right? I thought Lightning Network will make that kind of small transactions and remittances much easier into the future. But you're not talking about those kinds of onboarding, right? And so I just learned about Pay with Moon. So I just went to the website, and looks like people who are just buying Bitcoin as a store of value, or a currency to transact between small retail users. We don't have to learn about running a node or setting up channels. We just need to go to Moon, Pay with Moon, or Strike, or just is that right? And that's my first question. The second question is, because the Bitcoin price is going through this parabolic evolution over the next foreseeable near future, maybe another decade, 2 decades, who in the world is going to pay with Moon card, prepaid Moon card? Because if I'm going to spend $10 worth of sats today, tomorrow that $10 that I spend could be worth $20 for that bar of candy bar, or cup of coffee. So isn't it catch-22 that no one is going to use things like Pay with Moon? Because I don't want to pay with Moon and with Bitcoin at the moment. So 2 questions.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Michael and Tom. By the way, please, if we could just do 1 question each, just because we're running out of time, and I know some folks have to go. Michael and Tom, if you guys want to ask your questions, then we can address all of them.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. I will try to segue in my question a little bit, so it's similar. First off, Lyn, read your piece this morning on Bitcoin's network effect. Thought it was awesome, great educational piece, and I think within that, you actually talk about how, Elizabeth, you've talked about one of your key points is the future of Lightning Network should eventually work in a way that most users don't even realize they're using it. And so my question is just kind of about that vision, and how close we are to that. What are the hurdles that you see? And it sounds like we've talked about some things that are getting us closer, Sidecar or a sort of like browser integration or something along those lines. But I guess what's the vision there, and what are the challenges and successes that we've seen thus far?
Awesome. Okay, and Tom?
Yeah, thanks so much for bringing this together. Nik, really appreciate Layered Money, that, and thank God for Bitcoin are the two giveaway books I use now all the time, so thank you. My question is really for Lyn, and it's around network effect also, along with Michael. Beautiful post. I really appreciated it. Here are my two questions, and it's really about the adoption of Bitcoin as a network. The first is around the growth of adoption. You talk about the reasons for growth, and it's when the new network has an attribute where it's 10 times better than the existing one. And I'm wondering if you did any pondering or reflecting on the reasons why someone experiences the new network as 10 times better. And I'm going to use the analogy of, is it a pain reliever or a vitamin? In other words, are people appreciating and coming to Bitcoin as part of this network effect because they're fleeing from fiat currency and the present potential of hyperinflation? Or is it because that's a pain reliever? Or is it more like a vitamin where they're seeing it as honest money and its decentralization and things like that? And the second part of the growth of adoption is its relationship to price or the valuation associated with the network. And my question specifically is, did you notice any kind of tipping point where the continuity in price between the networks, seen, for instance, like in last March when the stock market took a big dip, so did the price of Bitcoin? Is there a tipping point when the continuity in the price or value between the networks shifts to discontinuity, where the drop in the value of one network is actually connected to the increase in the value of the other network?
Okay, that was two questions, by the way. We want to stick with one. Lyn, do you want to go first, and then we can work backward? I'm happy to address Michael and Sujung's questions afterward, but do you want to take that?
Sure, there's a lot there. But one of the points I brought up was the point that Jeff Booth has made, that in order to disrupt an existing network, like an upcoming network can't just be slightly better. It has to be way better in order to convince the number of participants to basically leave the existing network and go to one that's smaller and therefore starting out just with an inherent disadvantage. And Jeff often uses the example that Facebook got such a big leg up over MySpace in part because it adapted to mobile usage, whereas MySpace was slow to, and that's what made it 10 times better. It wasn't these small factors that did it. And I often use that as an example when I kind of counter the claims of altcoins, where I get like tons of emails like, hey, have you looked at this altcoin? Have you looked at this altcoin? And it's like they focus on the fact that in their view something is slightly better about it, but just without having that massive network effect, that massive security advantage, and then for Lightning having that increased liquidity on that secondary layer, that it's just a non-starter. And so that's kind of where I focused the network on. The part about the network effect in that piece was really kind of iterating why Bitcoin is doing well versus existing assets, but then also why later digital assets are unlikely to be able to displace Bitcoin in that regard. And then I guess for the earlier question that came up, I would just touch on, I agree with the sentiment that, like, for example, I don't particularly want to spend my sats. I like holding my sats. But like an example that interests me from a use case perspective is the apps that do like fiat to Bitcoin and back to fiat conversion without the user even realizing necessarily that they're using sats as the intermediary. So I do think that there are tons of payment technologies that are interesting that don't necessarily result in you spending your actual sats. And that's one of the things to kind of focus on. And two, it's also one of those things where people naturally, there's early adopters that want to use new technology and that want to help promote that technology. And so there will be people willing to pay sats for things out of principle and then they might go around in another way and keep buying sats. And so it's not that they're that they're depleting their sats, it's that they're circulating them to promote that network.
Yeah, it's funny because I have so many things to say about all the questions, but I will give a shout out to Bitcoin Beach. Brecky organized a really great room a couple of weeks ago around Bitcoin and emerging markets. We had Ray from Paxful, we had community members Bernard from Nigeria, we had folks from Venezuela. And one thing, I'll remind people, obviously Bitcoin is a global technology, but, not everyone has the same access to, stable currencies, financial services that folks in, say, the US and Europe do. So yes, some people do not want to spend their sats. I know folks that are doing rewards often see that people do then have a circular nature where then they'll spend those sats and buy additional things and then earn more sats on that basis. Some people, will buy things with sats and then rebuy their Bitcoin. But for a growing number of people, they are relying on Bitcoin not only for, say, just savings because they're living in a hyperinflationary environment or one where there's just not stability, but then also, as Lyn brought up, the potential for Bitcoin as a protocol of value is massive, and Lightning enables that because you can do this instant transfer. You don't have that volatility risk. This is something I've been talking about for like 5 years, and seeing Strike Global release and the great work of Jack Mahler is a really enthusiastic community member who's risen in his prominence, really demonstrated the idea that you can go from one currency to another. Bitcoin and Lightning can underpin that. And the end user does not, getting to the question that was asked by Michael, the end user doesn't even need to know that they're using Bitcoin and Lightning. And I think that's okay. And that's fine. And getting to some of what Sujong brought up, I think this room is open to anyone that's excited about learning about Bitcoin and Lightning. There are a lot of technical underpinnings, and we do tend to get into those, and there are enthusiasts that are running nodes. We at Lightning Labs are building out developer infrastructure, and we have great folks like Ken, Jack, a bunch of Keegan, folks in the audience that are building the applications to bring it to the end users. So if you, as an end user, the goal is to get Lightning embedded in a whole host of applications where you can natively transact with Bitcoin. So, and then, yeah, in terms of people wanting to spend their sats, well, unlike, say, a Visa or MasterCard, Lightning also makes it easy to earn sats. So we've seen really cool use cases like Fold, Stack, Sphinx, chat. A shout out to them. Adam Curry, the father of podcasting, who has been working on his podcasting 2.0 project to enable podcasters to earn stream sats over Lightning. I know Eski, the DJ now on Sphinx Chat, has a channel where he's DJing jungle drum and bass. So there are all sorts of really fun and interesting applications. They can be spending, they can be earning. If people don't want to spend their sats, they can spend and rebuy. They might use Lightning as this protocol where they don't even know that they're using it. And so there's kind of something for everyone. And then to get to the question around when will we get to the point where this vast majority of users doesn't know that they're using Lightning? Well, my answer is it just takes time. There's a natural order progression. Building out the infrastructure does not happen overnight, and that's fine. I would remind people that 1969 was the beginning of the internet, the ARPANET, and yet it didn't go mainstream until the 90s. I mean, early 90s for some, late 90s for others, even into 00, the 00s, the noughts, whatever we call them, the aughts. So there is just a point at which the infrastructure is ready, the applications are built, it goes downstream to the end users. I love the fact that people want to know how it works. There was a great tweet I saw recently. If people think Bitcoin is too complicated, ask them how the Federal Reserve works. Or things like, say, credit card networks or TCP/IP or the underlying nature of the internet. There can be a lot of complicated technologies that are underlying things. And then the goal is to abstract that for the end user and just to make it easier to use. So to me, it happens with time. Like, remember, command line applications when people would go on and use email, and now things are abstracted and people are just, for those that even still use email, which is not even that many people, there are all sorts of other applications to do so. So to me, it's just a question of building out that infrastructure and building out those end user applications. Does anyone else want to? Nik, do you want to chime in? Is there any thoughts on all these questions?
I got something I could say here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Sujung or Suyong. This might sound hard to believe, but after a number of years where you're investing in putting your savings into it, and then maybe you start earning in Bitcoin on the side, or even more and more companies are proposing employees to receive a part or even all of their salary in Bitcoin. And what happens is, as you continue to prefer spending your dirty fiat and keeping your pure Bitcoin on the side, eventually you run out of that dirty fiat, and then you want to spend sats because that's what you have. I know that might sound really far down the road, but it actually comes faster than you might imagine.
This has actually happened to multiple people after a few years in Bitcoin, where you just suddenly one day wake up and you're operating on a Bitcoin standard, meaning you think about
your bank accounts don't have any more fiat. You just have Bitcoin.
This is the ultimate maximalist position. It's just like you're so full into Bitcoin, you don't even have fiat.
Yeah, but then from another angle, you could say that, like, there are things you can do with your Bitcoin that you just can't at all, otherwise as well. Like, like you have things as far as like custody, these different products, and also kind of like things around micropayments as well. So like, there's additional kind of like value that may cause an individual to cross over. So obviously, we need to kind of improve the end user experience for onboarding in order for us to get there. So we've come a long way for the past few years as well. So.
But also,
even like Americans living abroad, if like a lot of Americans who I call mainlanders who live in the United States may not know this, but long-term Americans residing abroad are losing their bank accounts. They're being debanked involuntarily more and more, because abroad banks no longer want to have anything to do with American citizens because of the American financial system and the IRS, which heavily fines foreign banks for not reporting every single thing about Americans that they have as clients. So a lot of banks don't want Americans, and Americans abroad are being debanked from their local bank where they live. And Bitcoin is actually a way where they can continue having their resources when their banks are shutting them down. And I know that people think of like Lebanon or Venezuela or wherever, but it happens even to first world citizens living abroad as well.
Everyone, thank you so very much. I live in the UK. I'm a dual citizen, and because of FATCA, I am being debanked. So thank
well,
you.
There you go. That's
you,
exactly
thank
it.
you, everyone. Yeah. Okay. Very useful explanations. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the great questions. Does anyone else? I don't know how long people can stay. I know we're up on almost 90 minutes now. Nik, was there anything you wanted to chime in with any of those questions?
Yeah, the conclusion to my book, shameless plug here again, it's called Layered Money. I hope everyone goes and checks it out. It's freedom of currency denomination. Bitcoin in the end is an empowerment tool. And what I'm seeing is that now we have all these Bitcoin naysayers that are coming back again. At this point in time, you basically, if you are against Bitcoin, you are against the empowerment of billions of people around the world that don't have access to the dollar, the US banking system, the euro, or anything else that's remotely stable relative to the rest of the world. And so Bitcoin is an empowerment tool. We all are responsible for delivering this message to everybody that comes our way. And again, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate being here.
I love that. Jimmy Song, I added you to the stage. Are you here?
I am. Always glad to, hear what you guys have to say. I wasn't planning to comment on anything, but really happy.
No. Jimmy, I miss you. We've had so many fun times. But I know this is something near and dear to your heart. So is there anything you want to mention?
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting to me about Lightning, and the thing that I think we will eventually get to, is the decentralized web that we always wanted. Because right now we're in lots and lots of silos, right? Facebook, Google, or whatever. I think Lightning is the beginning of the truly decentralized web, where you can't cancel anybody, where everyone has their own node, and they're essentially running their own mini Twitter server or mini Clubhouse server or whatever. And that's what really gets me excited, because ultimately that's what will make the web so much better and more the vision of what it was meant to be. And you guys are definitely headed in that direction. Maybe starting with something like decentralized authentication or something to that effect, where you can give attribution that you are a particular identity without exactly identifying who you are, and so on. So really excited for what you guys are doing and the direction that this whole thing is.
Anthony, I just added you. Are you around?
Yeah, hey guys, how's it going?
Hi, I know you're working on Bottle. I wanted to know if there was any update to give us and how things are going on your end.
Yeah, absolutely. Things are going great. We're just working on Europe release.
What is Bottle?
Right now? Yeah. So Bottle Pay, it's similar to Strike in a way, where you can, spend and receive. Like we like to call it like sort of like a social exchange, just because there's this social aspect of peer-to-peer payments, Twitter bots, et cetera. You can tip someone 1 Satoshi if you wanted to on Twitter, but it's also a place where you can DCA in, withdraw Lightning, spend Lightning, deposit Lightning, things like that. So this is like really interesting to me in this conversation, just because I am one of the few Bitcoiners that loves to spend Bitcoin, because I always spend and replace. So using things like Moon, using things like Strike, it's I can't even use Bottle yet because I'm an American and we haven't launched in America yet, but we're working on that as well. But yeah, no, I love spending Bitcoin. I love using Lightning, mostly because I'm always trying to rebalance my channels. So I will actually rebalance my channels by actually spending spending sats on Fold gift cards, Bitrefill gift cards, Moon, Visa cards. So it's just super awesome to be able to use Lightning, and also every time I spend Lightning, I'm getting rid of my outbound liquidity, and I become a better router. So it's super interesting stuff.
Awesome. I want to. How are folks on time? I know we're up on an hour and a half. Anybody?
I have a quick question on Lightning authentication, if I could, or rather just to say, I would love to hear more about it with regards to social networking services. And as I understand it, that would need the provision of that through custodial wallet solutions.
What do you mean by provision of that by custodial wallets?
If I have understood, yeah, sorry, I'm not very technical, so forgive me, but if I have understood things correctly, for the provision of social networking services today, things like Shock Wallet, you require your own node. I'm very interested in LSATs in relation to custodial wallets, insofar as someone else could provide a social networking service powered by LSATs, but I don't think regular users are ready for running their own node yet.
Ryan, do you want to chime in, especially what Sphinx is doing, where they're actually running nodes for people? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you'll bear with me just for a little bit, we really like the metaphor of the Lightning Network being a bunch of roads for Satoshis, right? And kind of Alex was talking about each node being real estate and being well placed earlier. Well, one kind of interesting thing is thus far, all of these nodes, or the vast majority of these nodes, have been single family residential homes where it's just like one person, one node. If you will allow me to really stretch the metaphor, what Sphinx is doing with their nodes, and Ollie actually built something along these lines with kind of a safer way to do a multi-tenant node, where it kind of turns into like an apartment building or something like that. So you can have multiple accounts all running on one node. They all have their own keys. It's not 100% trustless, right? Because you are depending on the node to still be online and available. But you do have a balance, and you can spend out of that account at any time. I don't think anybody has done this quite just yet, actually. So it's a good thing to bring up. But theoretically, you could have an account on a node like Sphinx or something like that, and you could purchase an LSAT that gives you some capabilities to do something on some web service, whether it's free streaming from a website where usually you'd have to pay a sat per second or something like that, or access to a chat room with your favorite influencer that you had to pay for a monthly subscription or something like that to get into, right? So theoretically, you could purchase that LSAT, have it be attributed to your account on this node, and not have to do anything with regards to actually managing the node at all. And your browser extension or whatever from where you're interacting with these web services, you would still have the LSAT, and you would still be making the request and be provisioning kind of this credential as you're interacting with these services. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Could your LSAT in that incident embody your identity across a broader range of services?
Well, so this is what's tricky. Part of the benefit of using LSATs is actually that there is no single identity. Like, there are two kind of different models about identity, and this is kind of like deep theory stuff, so apologies, but there's the identity based where, like, one person, one vote type thing, I am who I am, and I can prove to everybody that I am who I am because I have this ID card. Or there is the credential model where it doesn't really matter who you are. All that matters is, like, I have the key, or I have to unlock the door, or I have the password or something like that. And with LSATs, it's more of a credential model. So you have like a private key, and that private key was used to purchase these credentials. And whoever has, whatever entity has that credential, they are the ones that are allowed to use the service. So, like, it's yes to answer your question, but not quite in the way you're thinking, right? Like, you could have one LSAT that allows you to enter multiple services, but it doesn't identify you as who you are. You're still able to retain privacy. And for a concrete example of that, like, in our services, if you use Loop or Pool, you'll notice that when you set it up and you start making transactions, you receive an LSAT that identifies your node, or that is like your ticket to use the service. And on our end, in our internal diagnostics, like, we have a bunch of customers, we have no idea who they are, right? We don't know which node they are, most importantly, right? So, like, they're using our service and we can identify them by their LSAT, but we don't know what their pub key is. So they are able to retain some measure of privacy using our non-custodial services. So that's kind of one concrete example for you.
Yeah, that's correct. By default, the LSATs are completely pseudonymous. But the cool thing of the underlying authentication mechanism that is used, the macaroons, there's also a way to do a third-party authentication with the macaroon. So if you want, if your use case needs a third party to identify you, that could also be built in. So you get the LSAT, you go to an identity provider, let's say Google or whatever, they attest that yes, this is said person, and then you continue the login process, and in the end you get an LSAT that is tied to some identity if that is somehow useful or needed. So it's very extensible as a protocol. Yeah.
Yeah, another that's a great point, Ollie. And one concrete example of that, if you're curious, is one of my friends, Buck. He wrote an article right at the start of COVID in like February or something like that, that was about how theoretically one could use LSATs to do a decentralized, privacy preserving, like COVID passport, proving that you had tested negative recently, which I thought was, nobody's built it, of course, but theoretically very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. I feel like we are right on the cusp somehow of cracking the combination of Bitcoin as your money and your own identity being secured Bitcoin blockchain. Maybe it's via Lightning or something else. I feel like we're right on the cusp of that, maybe 1 or 2 hops away.
Ben, I wanted to comment on one other thing that you had said. You had said that you're basically your assessment is that currently you don't think a bunch of people are willing or able to run their own nodes, and there's definitely a significant portion of people that's true. But I just wanted to make you aware that there are, and the reason that I'm doing this is that at Start9, one of the things that we're building is a means of making it very, very, very easy to get your own nodes up and started, whether it's, simple things like just regular Bitcoin nodes and Lightning nodes, or ultimately, hopefully in the future, things for the distributed internet, the way that Jimmy Song was talking about it a moment ago. And while ultimately there's certain pieces of it that might not be able to be completely abstracted away from users, being able to get people onto the starting line without having to be Linux sysadmins is something that's actually actively happening in the space, both at our company as well as a number of other ones and throughout the industry.
Yeah, I'm actually familiar with Start9. I love what you guys are doing. I'm a big supporter. I come at it from Jack's world of Bitcoin and gaming and Lightning, and I think there the consumers are outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem. They're coming at this with the lure of Bitcoin, but they are non-technical to the extreme.
Certainly.
Awesome. All right, we're a bit over time, but we can go on for a bit more. And if people have to drop that are speakers, totally understood. I would love to hear a little bit more about future extensions of Lightning. We have folks from the Shared Bits team here who are working on DLCs, otherwise known as discrete log contracts, and a lot of really interesting extensibility for Lightning, thinking about assets on top of Lightning, thinking about, I don't know, did we lose Lalo? Yeah, Lalo had to go back to coding, but he was like, told me like, oh, I have ideas for NFTs on Lightning. So we'll have to wait till next week to hear about that one. But yeah, tell us more about what's possible and what you guys are working on, if we have you still here.
Yeah, I guess at a high level, it's fun to think about how a Lightning channel in some sense is just like a two-person blockchain where it's something like a clone of Bitcoin, where any kind of contract you can write on top of Bitcoin, you can move into a Lightning channel. So an example of that being like discrete log contracts, which are essentially Oracle contracts on Bitcoin. You can put those in Lightning channels, at least in theory, hopefully someday. And any other, I'm having trouble thinking of a specific other use case, so I guess I'll mention one way you could use a DLC in a Lightning channel is you could have a Lightning channel which acts kind of as a synthetic asset for one of the two parties. So say like me and Ben have a Lightning channel and I want to have like some synthetic USD, some fixed value in dollar terms that I can use over Lightning, and Ben wants to go long BTC, then what we can do is we can have kind of a setup where, say, every minute or every 10 seconds, we check what the price is. And if the price of Bitcoin has gone up, then I have to pay Ben so that I have a fixed USD amount and he's going along Bitcoin. And if the price goes down, then he has to pay me so that I have a fixed USD amount. And then if we want to do this in a trustless way, what we can do is we can like have some kind of margin collateral for both of us that's locked up in a discrete log contract in the middle of the channel. So you can kind of think of it as in cases where there's no dispute happening, as is always the case in Lightning, there's no need to do anything fancy. You just move money from one side of the channel to the other. But say the price moves against me and I refuse to pay, then Ben can close the channel and claim the funds that he deserves from me on chain using a discrete log contract. And you could imagine having like, this is kind of like a trustless version of an older idea of like rainbow channels. So you could have all sorts of different assets in Lightning channels, and then it kind of has this neat effect where at the end of the day, though, when you're spending these coins, they are just sats over the Lightning network. So it has.
By the way, what are rainbow channels?
Yeah, it's essentially what I described, but where like I could have a single channel where I have like some sats, some synthetic USD, like a couple different pools of funds, some also like synthetic euros, whatever I need in the channel. You can also do some weirder, funner things that aren't just digital assets where like I have more value in that pot if like the Patriots are doing well in a game right now, in a football game, and less if they're doing poorly, or any index that you can follow, you can kind of play this game with. I like to use that example because you have a pot of like Patriot points, you have euros, dollars, whatever, and then you can essentially have the Lightning channel, kind of tying it back to the liquidity discussion from earlier. You can also bring in people who say want to be speculating while also using the Lightning channel, and kind of just mix and match all these kinds of things.
One of the really interesting things that I found out about DLCs recently that I think could have some serious ramifications is you can have trustless, or you could have a DLC that essentially acts like a normal call option. So you can put some Bitcoins into a channel, and you can sell a call option for that at a certain strike price ending at whatever date. And you can have essentially peer-to-peer derivatives markets as a result of DLCs. That would be really interesting on Lightning, because that would give you a way to hedge against any sort of risk. You can make them, I guess, futures as well if you wanted to, I guess. But the concept to me was extremely cool. And the fact that you could do it in this way without having a third party in the middle seems to me kind of like a really great way to take advantage of the technology that we have now.
Yeah, and there's even ways when you have kind of like these DLCs and channels, you can like transfer them to adjacent channels. So you could imagine having like some kind of market maker connected to some people, and then someone who wants to like sell their position to someone else can like just transfer that DLC to someone else using some HTLCs in conjunction to make that stuff atomic, and all sorts of other cool stuff you can do once you have payment points. But yeah.
You do have to trust the Oracle, but like at least the
Yeah.
way they're constructed, it's kind of cool that I saw the article on adapter signatures also. That's really super cool that they can optimize it that way. And you can, as an Oracle, basically show the price of Bitcoin at any particular point by revealing each digit or signing each digit or something to that effect, which I thought was really clever.
Yeah, and on top of that, we now finally have kind of some multi-Oracle support working, where you can use like 2 of 3 oracles or 3 of 5 or things like this to even further kind of mitigate or distribute trust.
Ryan, you've been thinking a lot about this stuff and writing about it in terms of extensibility of Lightning as a protocol, both the data angle and then the financial products angle. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually was talking to Lalu about how to do NFTs on Lightning using LSATs, and I think that there's actually a really interesting parallel between NFTs and DLCs, because like the Bitcoin way of looking at financial products and like decentralized finance is recognizing that oracles are like always going to be present, and you have to trust the oracle that's providing data, because by definition they're providing data that's outside the blockchain. So like you have to trust that source. And so how do we make it as safe as possible to trust this information? Whereas kind of the Ethereum ecosystem has like this decentralization theater where, oh, it's actually 12 Chainlink nodes that may just be one guy, and we're trusting them even though they don't have anything at stake. And the same kind of thing.
By the way, I will note with NFTs, there's been a really interesting discussion that you have to trust that the artist will not issue additional NFTs if they're saying it's limited edition, or issue it on different chains. But yeah, we're not going to go there.
Well,
no, but
trust is no, they can double spend totally.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going, Elizabeth. Is that actually is like, just like you have to trust the oracle, right? Like if somebody is issuing an NFT, like they issued the thing, right? They created the art. You have to trust them not to mint a bunch more of it. Like you can't like decentralize that or make it anything other than a trusted relationship, because just because you bought one of a limited edition thing that happened, like there's nothing stopping them from making more or putting them on other chains. So if you
right,
trust
and
the
artists
issuer
are
already,
in essence a type of oracle for
Mhm.
NFTs, perhaps. Yeah.
Perhaps. I mean, again, like analogy may be a little stretched. Bear with me, but I think it mostly
Exactly.
it mostly plays. And so the interesting thing about that is like, okay, so if you don't need to, if you trust them anyways, like, does this thing really need to be on a blockchain? Like, do you really need like a to take up space on this very valuable permissionless ledger to have this thing for all time? Like, what if you just have a purely off-chain token that's signed, and like maybe at the generation of this LSAT token, it's like timestamped. It's the hash of it is timestamped, so you can see that like it didn't exist before block A or whatever. Then you just have this bare ass token that's like an autographed baseball card. That's an LSAT that says whatever, like I was watching this stream, like maybe Zebedee will build something where they're like, I was watching this stream that happened, and I was present when Jack Everett got a 20 kill streak in CS:GO or something like that. And like that's a cool moment that you can hang on to, and you have this token that says that you were there. And like, yeah, would I buy it? Probably not, but I don't know. People buy Pokemon cards still, so like there's a market for it. Another one that we were talking about is like, say a DJ is releasing a new album or something like that, and they want to pre-sell some stuff to their fans. They could sell kind of these LSAT tokens, these NFTs. Their fans kind of hold them in their wallets, and then when the DJ releases the download link for the new album, like only those people with the LSATs can download it for like the first 24 hours or something like that. That's it's cute, it's fun, it's like a thing that creators could use to engage with their audience. But like is it a store of value? No. Does it need a blockchain? No. Like is it going to be some like multi-billion-dollar traded industry? Like probably not, but it could totally bring value to people that are using them, and we could totally build it, I think, online.
That is a perfect segue to Crypto Graffiti, who just came on stage. Are you here, Crypto Graffiti?
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, you've been experimenting with Lightning, and you're interested in music and art and all of that. Would love to get your take.
Yeah. So big fan of how micropayments can help artists get paid in new ways. I've experimented with it early on in my career, and I've got something else in the works that's more geared toward musicians, although that's just how it's going to be debuted, and I could see it having a lot of different uses. So essentially it's going to allow for split payments. And so I'm going to DJ a set in a few weeks at a pretty cool location. It's taken a while to hammer that out, but it's looking like it's going to happen. So April 2nd, I'll be spinning a set, and then if people like the music, they can send some sats, and it'll be split between me and then the producer of the track. And so I think this could lead to potential copyright takedown stuff, because eventually maybe the platforms could get cut in too.
Sorry, we actually just lost you. At least I did for like a few seconds. So it could lead to copyright takedown?
It could lead to the platforms possibly that are the live stream platforms, like the Twitches and other sites, maybe being cut in as well. So rather than having the streams taken down, maybe they can benefit from it, and so more people can hear the art and music, and rather than less people. Because I think this, like the way that it, like the model now just sucks, right? So these takedowns are just awful. Like no one likes it. You have to restart. You lose the audience. So this will be an MVP and an experiment, and hopefully people run with it and possibly turn it into a business of sorts. It'll be open source. I'm working with Fiat Jeff, and so we're working out some kinks, but the goal is to have it debut on April 2nd.
Awesome. I'm excited. Where can we find out more? Like, should we just follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, that works. So I'm gonna try to do like a restream so that people can watch it on a bunch of different sites. But yeah, cryptography on Twitter, all the socials, I guess.
Yeah, I think the programmability element is key here as well. Getting back to Bitcoin, the asset versus Bitcoin, the network. And, at the end of the day, our community, we have dreamers, we have people that have vision that can see the future. And there's so many exciting possibilities when you can natively program this stuff. And even getting back to some of what Ryan was talking about, just the ability to have customizations, to have new and interesting use cases that weren't previously possible. That's one of the things I absolutely love about Lightning, and it was very cool to see, as we discussed earlier on, for folks that are still here, in the Aker shareholder letter, just a few references to that massive potential, the use cases that weren't previously possible, the things we haven't even imagined yet, the ability to authenticate without email, password. It feels like we've been stuck in a paradigm on the internet for quite a while now, where we're giving up so much of this personal information to do things that we shouldn't have to give up. So, getting back to Jimmy's point and several others, it's time for a change. It's time for a different way of living on the internet. I mean, I'm ready. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in with thoughts. Jamal, by the way, are you here?
Hey, yep, I'm here.
Jamal, yeah, I'd love to get your take. I know you work with us in terms of great front-end development. I know you follow a lot of the developments, LSAT, authentication, what's going on with Lightning, privacy, things like that.
I mean, yeah, there's so much going on. It's hard for me to keep up. Thanks to Ryan.
It's okay. Nobody can keep up. It's impossible.
Yeah, exactly. It's very impossible. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely an exciting time in Lightning and Bitcoin in general. Seeing the growth. I mean, I think, at least from my perspective, I kind of look at always the, how to get people, specifically developers. So I'm really excited about what we've been working on in terms of improving the experience of onboarding, getting a node started up, getting kind of optimized for the world of Lightning, and kind of hand holding a lot of the users, because I think that's a huge bottleneck for building out the Lightning network to be bigger and better than what it is today. In regards to the financial stuff that Nadav was talking about, was actually news to me. So I'm actually interested in learning more about kind of the financial products that you can build in terms of the DLCs and Oracle stuff. I'm actually curious, Nadav. A question I have with Oracles is whether or not there is the possibility of doing it in a more decentralized way, where the source of data is coming from, kind of distributed sources over the Lightning network, where it's not like a single place of. So maybe you are, I guess you still have to trust the single source. So I was thinking, like, if pricing, like, if you have multiple exchanges getting multiple price feeds, and you have multiple nodes on the Lightning network pulling those price feeds, but then aggregating them, kind of coming to consensus on price feeds by routing messages over the Lightning network. It might just kind of.
So you can, I guess there are a couple different ways to skin the cat, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, even just users themselves, if they wanted to, could be pulling, or via gossip over some kind of Lightning-related network or anything like that, pulling Oracle attestations from say 3 different exchanges, and then so long as 2 of the 3 exchanges essentially agree on the price, executing DLCs based on that, and all of that stuff kind of happens client side. So you can non-interactively combine Oracle feeds to execute DLCs on.
One of the other things also is that these attestations don't, just because they have one signature, it doesn't mean that they have to have like one party coming to agreement on that signature, especially with the Schnorr and Taproot upgrades. Being able to combine those signatures means that you can have a more decentralized set of people coming to agreement on these sorts of things.
Yeah, if the oracles do, or if some set of like attesting bodies want to like cooperate and aggregate and form like a single oracle entity, they can totally do that and use thresholds, cryptography, and stuff like that in order to generate their attestations, and then people can use them, and they can even use that like aggregate mega oracle alongside other sources of information.
And if people want to learn more about this, Nadav, I know you guys have been doing a lot of good writing for Shared Bits. Should they check out your blog? Where should they go?
sharedbits.com/blog, and I'm actually in the middle of writing a blog post right now about multi-oracle stuff, so that'll be coming out soon.
Awesome. And then Ryan, you've been writing a decent amount about this in the Lightning Lab Substack newsletter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're, like Nadav is absolutely right. We're just getting started on the financial products that can be built on top of this stuff. Like I think it's, the fact that our first, we have 2 financial products that Lightning Lab sells, right? We sell a swap product with Lightning Loop, where you can swap coins from layer 2 to layer 1 and vice versa. And then we have the lease product in Pool, where you can rent your liquidity on Lightning for a duration. Those are like very, very simple products, right? Like those are in the context of broader finance, right? Like one thing I always think about when thinking about the growth of the Lightning Network is we don't even have debt yet, right? Like this is still a full reserve system, where it's like in, as Nik says in his book, right? This is second layer money. It's fully backed by the base layer money, so we don't even have debt involved at all. And as we've seen from DeFi madness and Ethereum ecosystem, like debt is just a supercharger of growth. And so I think thinking about kind of future financial products involved with liquidity, the obvious one that I think is an obvious progression, but not nearly obvious in how to actually implement it, is like a liquidity bond, where you actually provide liquidity out of and actually give up custody, but have some way of clawing it back at the end of the duration that you've agreed to. I think that's a really, really exciting thing that a bunch of node operators would really like to have for sure, and could really help with the growth. But maybe, I don't know if that requires soft forks or more complicated stuff in Pool or what. But it's that's only the beginning, right? Like we have just barely gotten.
Or by the way, are you saying some kind of time lock debt, Ryan?
Yeah, so like something like how the Pool channels right now, it would basically just be like with the lease right now is like you just don't give up custody, right? So like if I were to give up custody, have it time locked, like it's the same channel, like the practical implementation of this would be Breeze has a new user that gets signed up, and instead of Breeze connecting their new user directly with OpenNode or Bitfinex or something like that with a sidecar channel, Breeze can just like pluck a UTXO out of a pool and connect it in between Breeze's node and their new user directly, right? So like I think Lala mentioned something like this earlier with like an eventual thing with sidecar channels where like you can put down tracks in the network where they need to be filled, but I don't know if you can get it back once you put down the track. So like some notion of debt I think would be really interesting, but maybe too difficult to do on chain.
Yeah, I do think there will be a lot of interesting use cases kind of like this, where we'll start to see some interesting like distributed semi-blind escrow entities, kind of like similar to a DLC Oracle kind of trust model, maybe a little bit more trusting, but where you have escrows that are acting as like either signers or party to payment preimage construction or things like this, where you can essentially so long as you can prove that something did or didn't happen, you can have them like enforce some external rules. And if there's no disagreement, then they don't even have to know that they're being used and things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like again, you look at what is the thing that that Ethereum, like as the platform has, the Bitcoin doesn't, and it's these contract accounts, right? It's these third-party escrows that usually have hidden admin keys, but some of them have now evolved to not have any backdoors left in them. And like, you know, the Bitcoin joke about all of that stuff is like, well, that just kind of sounds like multi-sig with extra steps, which it is. But if you know, they have used them in some unique ways, and I think that kind of coming up there are some things that we can learn from the success over there about, you know, how to design, you know, better and more trustless financial products that are able to use native Bitcoin for the future.
Yeah, I'm really bullish. You mentioned multi-sig with extra steps. There's a really nice ZMNSCPXJ write-up called Smart Contracts Unchained that kind of describes something that's a lot like this that I like to think about a lot.
Yes, ZMN, a pseudonymous Lightning developer who actually spoke to the Lightning conference in Berlin, which is quite cool. All right, well, I do have to hop shortly. I also wanted to give a shout out to scarce.city. I know, Brecky, you had a piece on there recently. There's a new Bitcoin bear whale, I believe, piece that they're putting up for auction. They also have done some really fun meme-filled blog posts in the past, one around Lightning and kind of native internet transactions and data that I know, Ryan, you helped them with back in the day. Check out their blog, and they have one just as a general overview of what Lightning is. So they have an auction coming up. I think it's starting tomorrow.
Yep, it's tomorrow, and the piece is awesome, and everyone should go and place bids.
What's the backstory, Brecky? I remember those days where there was this like, yeah.
I don't remember exactly when it happened. I think it was it 2016? But anyway, there was a day where I think somebody dumped like 30,000 Bitcoin on the market or something like that.
Yeah, I believe
the bear
it
whale.
was a wall of Bitcoin at 300 where somebody
Yeah.
just put a shit ton of Bitcoin up. I don't know if anybody else, does anybody recall? I remember that day.
2014.
Oh, yeah.
Was it 2014?
If it was 300, it had to have been probably that. The bear whale didn't cause that crash. So that was before Gox, I think, right?
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I do remember that quite well when that happened, and people were looking at it online and just seeing this massive wall. So this is an art piece commemorating that. Very cool stuff. All right, well, Brecky, I think we're well over 2 hours here. So do we want to wrap it up? Any final words, kind of previews for future?
Yeah,
thanks so much to everybody.
My phone is actually dying, so I'm gonna have to cut the stream anyway. But yes, thank you to everyone who joined. This was probably my favorite Lightning Lab so far. We had some amazing speakers. If you want to go back and catch this stream, you can find it at the Swan Bitcoin YouTube page. And for anyone else, if you're new to Cafe Bitcoin, click on the Cafe Bitcoin in the top left. Join the club. We've got tons of events like this one. Lightning, hopefully, we'll be doing this every Wednesday from now until hyper Bitcoinization. And
it never ends. Oh, and also, we are hiring. Lightning Labs is hiring. Check out lightning.engineering/join-us, or just go to our website. Check out the Twitter, twitter.com/lightning. No E in it. You'd be surprised how many people put an E in Lightning. I know a bunch of the other companies here are hiring as well. It was really cool to have Suredbits, Thunder Games, Pay with Moon. Yeah, so definitely check out what folks are up to with that. We also have a new Discord for devs that want to do office hours. We had the first one yesterday. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific. I think it's every other Tuesday we're doing. We'll see about the timing, 1 p.m. Eastern. So check out the new Discord. You can find it at twitter.com/lightning. We have tweets there. Yeah, and I guess we'll be back. Hyper lightningization, by the way.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's I actually saw a funny tweet today. I sent it to some folks that was like, there's a surprising number of Lightning maximalists. So I think that's a good note to end on. Like, what is Lightning maximalism? I'm not quite sure yet, but I think it's an interesting new trend. So
I can see it now. In 5-10 years, a bunch of crusty old Bitcoin maximalists who refuse to use Lightning, and that's the real fight. But
never a dull moment in our world. All right, thanks so much. I know Lyn and Nik had to hop. To everyone who's participated, and we'll see you guys soon.
Yep, one quick word. We actually have a new calendar of events up, so you can find that at cafebitcoin.club. We're going to try to keep that updated. It has all our recurring events on there as well. And of course, if you're looking for more Bitcoin conversation, there's another Cafe Bitcoin room going on right now. And they're probably talking about something boring like
it never
price
ends.
action.
Bitcoin is global. It's 24/7. Thanks,
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, all.